Stop whatever you're doing and listen closely, because what I'm about to share is more than sad news. It's a story that has broken hearts all over the world. This isn't just another headline. It's a tragedy that has left millions of people stunned, confused, and devastated. Deitrick Haddon, a name that needs no introduction in the gospel community, is fighting for his life. For years, his voice was a lifeline for people who were hurting. His songs weren't just music, they were like prayers set to melody. He could step onto a stage and lift up thousands of souls at once. He was a man whose gift went beyond talent. It was ministry, healing, and hope. But today, that powerful voice is silent. After what was supposed to be a surgery with no serious risks, things went terribly wrong. Complications arose, and Deitrick slipped into a coma. That single moment changed everything. Inside the hospital room, surrounded by the cold sound of beeping machines, the atmosphere was heavy. His wife, Dominique, sat at his bedside, holding his hand tightly as though her touch alone could pull him back. With tears streaming down her face, she whispered, "Baby, please come back to me." Her voice cracked under the weight of grief, and those nearby said it was the kind of cry that stays with you forever. The hardest blow came when Dr. Jackie Moore, the physician many fans had looked to for comfort, stepped out before cameras and reporters. Until then, she had been a pillar of strength, always reassuring, always calm. But in that moment, she broke down. Her lips trembled, her eyes filled with tears, and her voice cracked as she said, "We tried everything we could. Now, it's in God's hands." Those words spread across the internet in minutes. Clips of Dr. Jackie crying, Dominique collapsing on the hospital floor, and fans screaming outside the hospital went viral. Twitter filled with hashtags like #PrayForDD and #HaddonInComa. Instagram overflowed with photos of candlelight vigils, grieving fans, and prayers written in captions. TikTok flooded with emotional edits of his past performances. It was as if the entire gospel world had stopped breathing. But the shock didn't end there. Questions began swirling. Whispers turned into rumors, and rumors became full-blown conspiracy theories. Was this truly just a complication from surgery? Or was something being hidden from the public? That night, what should have been an ordinary evening for thousands of fans became one of the darkest nights in gospel history. Deitrick, the man who once commanded arenas with nothing but the whisper of a note, was now lying unconscious, connected to tubes and machines, caught between life and death. Doctors and nurses worked tirelessly, rushing in and out of the room. Dominique clutched a Bible in her lap, praying nonstop, whispering scripture through her tears. She refused to believe her husband could slip away. She had walked through life storms with him, through victories, through struggles, through triumphs, and now she sat helpless as the man she loved showed no signs of waking. When Dr. Jackie walked out into the hallway where cameras and fans waited, there was silence. For a moment, people hoped she carried good news. The crowd hushed. Everyone leaned in. Instead, what came out shattered hearts everywhere. Deitrick is in a coma. Only God can bring him back now. The reaction was instant. Fans screamed. Some dropped to their knees in disbelief. Others covered their faces and wept uncontrollably. Security struggled to keep the hallway clear as people collapsed under the weight of grief. Dominique stumbled out of the room, her cries echoing through the hospital like a haunting him. She screamed, "Not him, please, God, not him." Nurses tried to comfort her, but she resisted, her grief too raw, too heavy to contain. That moment, too, was captured on video and shared online, spreading like wildfire. Within hours, the internet was consumed. Twitter trended with prayers. TikTok flooded with fan tributes. Choirs around the world recorded themselves singing his songs, voices breaking with emotion. Strangers who had never met him sobbed in their bedrooms, whispering his lyrics as though they were prayers of their own. Churches across the country dedicated services to him. Mega pastors went live, urging people everywhere to pray for a miracle. Gospel radio stations played his music nonstop, every lyric now sounding like a farewell. But as the prayers rose, so did the questions. Why had a routine surgery gone so wrong? Why was no clear explanation being offered? An anonymous hospital insider claimed the procedure had been botched. Blogs accused the medical team of negligence. Conspiracy theorists suggested something more sinister: a cover-up, a hidden overdose, or pressure from management to keep him performing despite his health. Dr. Jackie, who had already gone viral for her emotional breakdown, became the center of suspicion. Some said her tears were genuine, proof that she was as heartbroken as everyone else. Others accused her of hiding the truth, pointing to her hesitation and vague statements as evidence of something darker. Meanwhile, outside the hospital, fans turned the sidewalks into a sea of grief. Hundreds gathered with candles, holding up posters that read, "Wake up, Pastor Haddon." Children sang his songs through tears. Elderly women rocked back and forth, praying out loud for his healing. Cars honked as they passed, drivers crying at the wheel in solidarity. Inside, Dominique refused to leave his side. She barely ate, barely slept, and whispered constantly into his ear. She told him about their children, about their future, about the life they had built together. Sometimes she sang softly, her voice breaking on every note, as though trying to sing him back to life. At one point, a photo leaked online showing her kneeling by his bed, face buried in his chest, clutching him as if she could anchor him to this world. That single image became the most shared picture in gospel history. Millions reposted it with captions like, "This is true love, and if you're not praying after seeing this, you have no heart." The internet split in two. On one side were the faithful, clinging to hope, flooding live streams with prayers, organizing vigils, and trending hashtags like #WakeUpDeitrick and #MiracleForHaddon. On the other side were the skeptics, demanding transparency, dissecting every detail, and accusing the hospital of a cover-up. But through it all, Dominique's world had narrowed to one reality: her husband was slipping away, and she couldn't let him go. Witnesses described hearing her sobs echo through the sterile hallways, some saying it was the most haunting sound they'd ever heard. Clips of her breaking down, whispering, "If he doesn't wake up, I don't want to live either," swept across TikTok. Millions stitched the video with their own reactions, crying on camera, pleading for him to fight, begging God to intervene. Celebrities joined the chorus of grief. Gospel singers posted tributes calling him the soul of a generation. Even secular artists paused concerts to dedicate performances to him. News anchors choked up while reporting, one breaking down live on television, saying, "We are watching history's greatest gospel voice fade before our eyes." And yet, what kept the world frozen was the uncertainty. Doctors released no clear statements, only repeating that he was stable but unresponsive. No one could say how long he might remain in this state or if he would ever return at all. Petitions popped up online demanding the truth. YouTube videos titled "The Truth" about Deitrick Haddon's coma gained millions of views overnight. Forums filled with theories. Was he pushed to exhaustion? Was this a case of malpractice? Or was there something far more sinister happening behind closed doors? Still, for Dominique, none of that mattered. Her world was confined to the four walls of that hospital room where the man she loved lay motionless. She whispered, she sang, she prayed, and she wept. For her, it was never about rumors or theories. It was only about holding onto hope. As the days stretched on, the tragedy became more than just a personal heartbreak. It became a cultural earthquake. The gospel world had never been so united in sorrow. Millions of people who had never met Deitrick felt as though they were losing a family member. The only certainty was this: a voice that once filled arenas with life and faith was now silent, and the world had never felt emptier. And so, the story waits. Will he wake up? Will that voice rise again? Or will this be remembered as the moment the gospel world lost one of its greatest? For now, no one knows. The world prays, the world waits, and a family clings desperately to hope, believing that somehow, against all odds, a miracle is still possible. Dominique's health was breaking down as the long nights in the hospital stretched into days. People close to her noticed she was hardly eating. Instead, she lived off nothing but cups of coffee and whispered prayers. Some insiders claimed she had fainted several times, worn down by worrying and exhaustion, but she still refused to step away from her husband's side. "If he leaves this world, I leave too," she reportedly told a friend, who later shared her words online. That single sentence spread across the internet like wildfire. It was repeated in news articles, turned into headlines, and posted on millions of feeds. Strangers cried as they read it. Families held each other closer. Her devotion wasn't just admired, it was felt deeply by everyone who heard it. In churches across America, his songs began to play during altar calls. Congregations that had sung joyfully before now lifted trembling voices as they prayed desperately for a miracle. Children recorded themselves weeping while listening to his music. Strangers who had never met him wrote letters filled with hope, asking that someone, anyone, would read their words aloud to him in the hospital. This tragedy wasn't just being observed from a distance. It was being shared, lived, and carried by millions of hearts at once. Then came the cruel twist. Late at night, rumors began to spread like wildfire. Deitrick's condition had taken a dangerous turn. Reports whispered of alarms echoing through the ICU. Fans standing vigil outside the hospital said they saw doctors rushing inside, moving with urgency. From somewhere deep inside the building, Dominique's screams echoed, so piercing that people outside fell silent in fear. For several agonizing minutes, the world thought he was gone. Social media erupted. Twitter feeds exploded with unconfirmed reports announcing his death. Hashtags such as #RipDeitrick trended alongside #StillFighting. Panic spread. Some people collapsed in tears, certain it was the end. Others clung to hope, begging for an official confirmation, but no statement came. No press release. Nothing. Just silence. The silence itself was unbearable. Families sat in their living rooms, clutching their phones, refreshing them over and over. Fans outside the hospital wept into the night air, praying desperately that the rumors weren't true. Inside, Dominique knew the truth in real time. Witnesses said the sound of her screams that night was unlike anything they had ever heard. Her pain was so raw, her voice so broken, that even hardened security guards were reduced to tears. And so, part 2 of this heartbreaking story closed the way it began, with haunting uncertainty. Was this the start of his recovery, or the beginning of the end? No one knew. One thing was certain, however, the once powerful voice of Deitrick Haddon had grown into a faint whisper, barely holding on to life. The silence after those alarms felt heavier than sound itself. For nearly half an hour, it was as if the entire world stopped breathing. With no official word, people held onto one another in fear. Outside, strangers clung together, sobbing loudly. Some fainted right on the sidewalk. Others collapsed to their knees, crying out to God in desperation. And then came Dominique, barefoot, with mascara streaking down her face. She stormed out of the ICU. Witnesses say she screamed so loudly, the walls themselves seemed to shake. "Don't take him from me, please. Don't take him," she cried, collapsing onto the cold hospital floor. Cameras caught every second, and within minutes the footage was online. The clip went viral, becoming one of the most heartbreaking videos of the year. Millions reposted it with captions like, "I can't watch this without crying," or "This is what true love looks like." The tragedy was no longer private, it was global. News anchors choked back tears on live broadcasts. Entire churches cried in unison as pastors broke the news of the scare mid-service. Some churches even rang their bells throughout the night, summoning communities to gather and pray as if it were wartime. Across oceans, in countries that had never even followed gospel music, Strangers lit candles and whispered his name into the darkness. But the storm wasn't just one of sorrow. Anger soon joined it. Social media erupted with outrage directed at the hospital. How had a routine surgery turned into such a nightmare? Anonymous leaks claimed that Deitrick's vitals had crashed during recovery due to complications that might have been avoided. Some called it malpractice. Others spread darker theories: sabotage, cover-ups, intentional harm. At the center of the firestorm was Dr. Jackie, the surgeon once praised for her compassion and skill. Now, she was drowning in accusations. Her emotional breakdown, once seen as proof of her humanity, was replayed and dissected endlessly. Was she crying from guilt? Some asked, does she know more than she's telling us? Petitions demanding her resignation gained hundreds of thousands of signatures. Cruel memes spread online, branding her as the doctor who silenced gospel's greatest voice. 2 days later, Dr. Jackie appeared before cameras, trembling, her voice breaking. "We are doing everything we can," she said. "Deitrick's condition is critical. Please keep praying." Tears rolled down her face mid-sentence. But her words did not calm the storm. Half the viewers wept with her. The other half tore her apart, accusing her of hiding the truth. Meanwhile, Dominique was falling apart completely. Friends described her as a shadow of the woman she once was. She refused to eat, rarely slept, and never left her husband's bedside. Nurses reported she fainted twice in one day from dehydration. But when urged to rest, she screamed, "If I leave him for 1 second, what if that's the second he goes?" A video later leaked of Dominique softly singing one of his own songs at his bedside, clutching his limp hand. Her fragile voice trembled as she whispered the words, "He's able." Millions online reposted it, calling it the most painful duet in history. This was no longer just a wife grieving. It was a love story unraveling before the eyes of the entire world. The internet became a battlefield. Hashtags like #pray for Deitrick and #justice for Deitrick trended side by side. Some begged God for a miracle, others demanded accountability. Churches organized global prayer chains. In New York City, thousands gathered in Times Square, holding candles and singing his songs in unison while giant screens displayed his face. In Los Angeles, celebrities knelt together in public prayer. On TikTok, heartbreaking videos circulated of children pleading, "Wake up, Pastor Haddon." Even viewers who weren't religious cried openly as they watched. What had begun as a personal health crisis had now become a worldwide tragedy. And then came an even darker twist. A leaked report began to spread online, claiming that the surgery had never been necessary in the first place. It suggested that the procedure had been elective, pushed forward despite warnings. Was it true? No one could confirm, but the damage was done. Rumors multiplied. Some said management forced the surgery for publicity. Others accused insurance companies of financial manipulation. Still others whispered of spiritual warfare, arguing that his role in gospel music made him a target for forces of darkness. The noise drowned out reason. Every hour brought new rumors. Every rumor fueled fresh hysteria. And through it all, Deitrick remained silent, unmoving, caught between life and death. Dominique's breakdowns became a regular occurrence. One night, she staggered into the hallway, shouting to the heavens, "Why him? Take me instead." Someone captured the moment on their phone, and when the video spread online, it broke hearts everywhere. Even people who had never prayed before admitted they cried watching it. Meanwhile, Dr. Jackie lived under unbearable pressure. Death threats filled her inbox. Protesters gathered outside her clinic, chanting, "Tell us the truth." For a woman who had devoted her life to healing, she now found herself painted as the villain in a tragedy she couldn't control. In one rare interview, her voice trembling, she whispered, I'm just as broken as you are. Please stop attacking Emmy." But the mob wasn't interested. The internet had already chosen her as the face of blame. The world was in chaos. Fans refused to sleep, glued to live updates. Streams outside the hospital attracted millions of viewers. Strangers from across the globe cried together in chat boxes, bonded by grief. International news outlets covered the story around the clock. And then, the unthinkable happened again. Just after midnight, alarms rang out once more. ICU staff rushed into the room. From outside, witnesses heard Dominique's screams, louder and more heartbreaking than ever before. Instantly, rumors spread. People declared it was the end. Twitter was flooded with tributes. Hashtags turned black. Fans wrote farewell posts as if he had already passed. For hours, it felt like the entire world was grieving the loss of a family member. But again, silence. No confirmation. No denial. Just silence. Was this the final goodbye? Or another cruel false alarm? The truth remained locked behind hospital doors. As the next chapter closed, the gospel community stood frozen, paralyzed by uncertainty. Millions clung to their phones, refreshing endlessly, waiting for one small sign of hope. Churches kept their doors open all night. People wept at altars. Entire communities begged for a miracle, for just one more chance. But all they had was silence. The greatest voice in gospel music lay motionless, suspended between heaven and earth, while the people who loved him most crumbled in front of cameras. And, in that silence, the tragedy only grew louder. Stop scrolling. Let this sink in. Because tonight, what we're witnessing is not just another headline. It is history, it is heartbreak, and it is the kind of tragedy that doesn't just make you cry, it shatters you from the inside out.